The Chicago Bears have now officially scheduled a handful of interviews. We're going to talk about those interviews. I'm also going to rank my favorite candidates and worst candidates for the Chicago Bears head coaching position. And George McCaskey responds to the chance of sell the team. We're going to talk about all that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bears Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bears news and content.
What's going on, Bears fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bears Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bears related. I'm the host there, Hayes, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Chi Bears Central on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into the content for today. So we know that the Bears sent out several requests. I think they're up to now 14 candidates. They sent out requests for interviews. They do have a handful of interviews already scheduled. Not everybody is scheduled so far. We do expect more to get on. This is coming after last night with the Cowboys denying the Bears' request to interview Mike McCarthy. I talked about this in a live stream yesterday, but I'm just going to quickly recap it here. This only means that the Cowboys are basically using this as an exclusive period to negotiate with Mike McCarthy. He can interview with any team as of January 14th, which is just 6 days away from today's date. So, if he does not reach an extension with the Dallas Cowboys to stay there on a new contract, I do expect the Chicago Bears to circle back around to Mike McCarthy and to interview him, depending on where they are with their own head coaching search up until that point in time. So I think it's, and overall, while I am and have my own part, listen, this has nothing to do with football. It just has, everything to do with football, but like a fan perspective. I don't want Mike McCarthy as the next head coach of the Chicago Bears, only because he was a former Packer head coach. But if you look at his resume independently, and I know some people are going to say, well, what did he do with the Cowboys? He never done anything without Aaron Rodgers and all of that. Mike McCarthy has one of the most decorated resumes of any coach candidate in this. He just does. And that's objective, right? I still have my personal opinion on it, right? And objectively, the Chicago Bears should be interviewing everybody, and they should be sitting down and getting the perspective. And that's really what I think a lot of these interviews are about, is about gaining perspective of what other coaches would do or the vision that they have with this team. They can contrast that against the others. But we've gone at that ad nauseum. Talk about that a little bit more when I talk about my top 5 candidates and the candidates I want the Chicago Bears to stay away from. But with that said, I want to talk a little bit about the interviews that the Bears already have officially scheduled. So Mike Vrabel, and I know I kill his name every time, but it is what it is. Mike Vrabel, whatever. He has his interview officially today. So we initially thought that Ben Johnson would be the first initial interview by the Chicago Bears. We don't have an exact date and time on that yet, but Vrabel will be interviewed today. And so he's going to get the first knock at it. And so, I know that Vrabel has become a lot of Bears fans' favorite candidate when you look at the fact that he does have experience, the fact that he does have that mentality. And honestly, I'll say this. Vrabel he just seems like a Chicago Bears head coach. Like if you just replace every picture that you have him in, you see him in snow and things like that, and put Chicago Bears merch on him, he looks like a Chicago Bears head coach. He seems that he has that leader of men. He has that strong mentality and personality. He seems like a Chicago Bears head coach. Now, the question, if they do go with Vrabel, does come down to, is he going to be able to get the right coordinators in here, specifically on the offensive side of the ball? But we'll talk about that more. But Vrabel does have his interview scheduled officially today, so we'll hear a little bit about that. Next up, Mike Kafka, the Giants offensive coordinator, has his interview scheduled for Thursday. That's tomorrow. And then Pete Carroll is also scheduled for tomorrow as well with the Chicago Bears. And then Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson have both accepted and scheduled their interviews. We just don't know exactly when their interviews are so far. Now, that leaves coaches that the Bears have requested interviews with that have not officially been scheduled yet. And Joe Brady, Brian Flores, Todd Monken, Drew Petzig, David Shaw, Arthur Smith, Anthony Weaver, and Mike McCarthy. Well, Mike McCarthy was denied. And so that's where everything sits right now. The Bears also reportedly reached out to former Stanford head coach as well. So we'll see what happens with that one. So, all that, it is what it is. The Bears have sent out those interviews, but who are the best candidates, right? And of course, everybody's list is going to be subjective and to their own personal goals, to their own personal things that they see. And I look at it as a tier list. To me, in tier 1, I have Ben Johnson and Mike Vrabel. That just is what it is, right? I think that Ben Johnson, because of what the vision that he has and what he's done in success with offense, is definitely with the Bears, and having a quarterback there that definitely makes him. He's been mentioned as wanting the Bears job, those type of things. Of course, just because he's had success as a coordinator does not mean he's going to have success as a head coach. So how that's going to be supported by the coordinators, going to get hopefully some veteran coordinators in here. I've already talked about my dream lineup if they do hire Ben Johnson would be to get either Ron Rivera or Lovie Smith in here as his DC. That's just my personal. It's never going to happen. I want to be clear. It has zero chance of happening. But I would love it if we were able to get Lovie Smith in here to be the defensive coordinator and Ben Johnson as the head coach. If we hire Ben Johnson as the head coach, again, never going to happen. But it is what it is. But that's my tier 1 and tier 1 candidates there. Right below them is Pete Carroll, even though, again, Pete Carroll's age, it gives me concern. But I will say this, when you look at resumes, Pete Carroll has it all. Has success in college, success in the NFL. So, again, Pete Carroll with the mindset, he's going to develop a quarterback. I do think Pete Carroll's going to pick really good coordinators. I already know my Bears fans are going to say, what about Shane Waldron, Hayes? Shane Waldron actually looked pretty good under Pete Carroll. So when I say pick pretty good coordinators, I mean that are going to help him, right? I think to support him, he's going to pick some really good coordinators. They may not be shit once they leave him, but I do think that that he's going to be able to pick some really good coordinators in it. So I have Pete Carroll there and Brian Flores, much like I said for Mike Vrabel. I think it comes down to me that Brian Flores he has that mentality. I know people are going to say, but what about Tua? What about suing the NFL? What about this? What about that? Most of that was proven right. In my personal opinion, again, this is a subjective list, right? I'm not being objective here. Subjective list. I really do like Brian Flores as a candidate for the Chicago Bears. And, again, I've come around on Vrabel, but I have them. And then Mike McCarthy right below that. Again, I don't like, and I do not want them to hire Mike McCarthy. But I think when you look at objectively at the resume, I think that it does kind of speak for itself. Now, in no way do I want to see the Chicago Bears announce that they've hired Mike McCarthy as their next head coach. I don't want to see that. But again, being objective, and a lot of you guys on the episode last night pointed out some things that I had to look at and say, you know what, you're right? I had to, again, I understand why the Bears are interviewing him. Do I want them to hire him? No, but I do understand that. For sure. But, Pete Carroll's the guy that I've come along to as well, just looking at just the football aspect of it, right? And so, when it comes down to it, I look at it and I say, Pete Carroll's a guy that I really do like. You look at being in football for well over 30 years. He is one of the oldest candidates on this list, if not the oldest outright. And, of course, that's going to raise some questions. But the thing that I would like to see, if the Bears do go Pete Carroll, is that have a coordinator under him that you really feel like you're grooming to be the next head coach. I would love to see if they do that. Again, that's wishes. That it is what it is when it comes down to that. But then other guys that I kind of like the Joe Brady more than I've looked into him. The more that I've looked into him, things like that. But again, he's a very tier below all those other guys. But let me know what you guys think. Who are your top candidates? Whether you want to rank them in tiers or just outwardly rank them. Who are your favorite candidates right now for the Chicago Bears head coaching position? Let me know all that down below. All right, now with the best, who are some of the worst candidates for the head coaching position? And at number 1 on my list, Arthur Smith. Now, I know Bobby presented a really good argument as far as what Arthur Smith was able to do with that Atlanta Falcons team and what he was able to do as the offensive coordinator with the Pittsburgh Steelers. But the way that I look at it with this is that I just think you can do better. Right, I think if you're going to go, yes, he does bring some head coaching experience and things like that. But at the end of the day, I just think that there are candidates better on the list, even despite Arthur Smith's resume, that would just make a little bit more sense for the Chicago Bears. Now, I could buy into him being somebody who can get the most out of the Bears offense. I can. Just admittedly, I can buy into that. But I just don't know if I trust him as the Bears' next head coach, even if they are going to go offensive-minded. Ben Johnson, Joe Brady, these are guys that I would have ranked well above Arthur Smith. And, overall, I just don't really like it. Next up, as far as number 2 on my list, and this may be a little bit surprising, but Thomas Brown. And again, I'm all for it, depending on who we hire as the next head coach. If they keep an open mind and they're open to keeping Thomas Brown, I do think the next head coach needs to decide their staff. Whatever they want to do with their staff, that's what their decision. But if they wanted to keep Thomas Brown on as an OC, I'm all for that. And I understand why they're giving him a chance to interview, considering how much his role has changed, how much how much things changed from him coming in to be the passing game coordinator to eventually taking over as the interim head coach. I understand why they're interviewing him, but I just don't think I saw anything enough to tell me that Thomas Brown needs to be the next head coach. Offensive coordinator, you can sell me on. Head coach, I'm not too favorable on that aspect of it, but maybe you guys will tell me I'm a little bit tripping on that one. Next up, as far as candidates that I really don't like, David Shaw. I know that he has that leader of men mentality that we've heard about, that reportedly the Bears are really looking at. And you look at his time in Stanford as well, like he's been solid. And I can't deny it being solid, but to me, if you're going to go the route of kind of unproven to a degree, I get it. He has head coaching experience, not NFL head coaching experience, but he does have head coaching experience. But I think that you look at Stanford. Stanford, despite what he's able to do over those 11 years being with Stanford, they parted ways with him in part because they felt like he was a little bit old school. And so, for the Bears that are trying to update some things, and even though he does have an offensive background, I think that he does have a very conservative as far as pace with that offense, and that's not what we're trying to go to. That's really what we've done before. So David Shaw is somebody that I understand why they're interviewing him. I understand why he's going to get a chance to sit down and talk to everybody, but he's not the guy that I really hope comes out with the position overall, at least not in my opinion. But as always, you guys can always let me know how you guys are feeling because, again, I could be tripping on that one. And then last up on this list, Vance Joseph. Listen, I don't know what it is, right, about Vance Joseph, but in looking at him, his stint as Denver with the head coach from 2017 to 18, the fact that the team, achieved more than 6 wins, they never got more than 6 wins with him there. I just don't like the idea of bringing in somebody who just did not. Now, again, there's situations for every team on why a head coach cannot be successful. That doesn't always mean that they're just a bad coach outright. But I really don't want that time to experiment. I want somebody who I feel a little bit more confident in than Vance Joseph. But again, maybe that's just me. I'm different when it comes down to it. So maybe you guys have a different perspective. I'd love to hear that from you guys. You guys can tell me down below who are some of the candidates that you dislike the most that the Bears have put in requests to interview. Now, yesterday there was a series of press conferences by Ryan Poles, Kevin Warren, George McCaskey as well. And some of the things coming out of that did not paint the Bears in the best light. Now, that should be no surprise to anybody who is a Chicago Bears fan. The Bears doing things when it comes down to it, we do things a little confusingly at times, right? Kevin Warren and talking about that Ryan Poles and, saying that Ryan Poles is going to be here for a long time, but then said a year is a long time. So it's left people to think like, okay, what's going on here? This messaging is a little bit weird when it comes down to it. And yes, it was. But I think that comes down once again to the Chicago Bears not having a consistent vision. We can't get right at times. Sometimes we don't know our left from our right. But the person that's supposed to be leading all of this, as far as the owner, is George McCaskey. Right now, we know that Virginia still owns the team. George McCaskey is going to be taking over. He was asked about the chance to sell the team at Soldier Field on December 26th, and he said this. First, he did say that he was a little bit more upset that Lions fans invaded Soldier Field, but he says this: "It's understandable. Our fans are passionate. They're incredibly frustrated. They want to make their voices heard. I was more bothered by the week before when Detroit Lions fans tried to take over Soldier Field and forced the home team to go to a silent snap count. Unfortunately, that did not happen." Now, here's the thing. George McCaskey frustrates me. And just in the sense that sometimes George says some things that he really should, at this point in time, at being 68 years old, being around football for his whole entire life, and I get it. He's admitted. He's a fan. He's not somebody who has necessarily the football IQ, and that's fine. Not every owner, despite what some Bears fans will have you think, not every owner is this amazing football mind. They just hire people that they trust to do their jobs, and they hire the right people, right? So that's what it comes down to. But sometimes McCaskey, is a little tone deaf. Now, I do like the fact that he says that the fan base are passionate. They want to make their voices heard because that is what is happening here. Bears fans are tired. But my question is, are you getting the right messaging from that, McCaskey? Are you understanding why Bears fans are tired? Are you understanding what needs to happen to limit that frustration by the Chicago Bears? Fans are always going to be fickle. It just is what it is. It's the nature of being a fan. Fan is short for fanatic. Some of us are fanatics about our teams. It just is what it is. We're crazy people, right? But I think when it comes down to it, it leads to when George is so out of touch at times with things. One of the things he said in yesterday's presser as well is that he doesn't feel like the coach and GM alignment is a big deal. Basically, I'm paraphrasing. That's not exactly the way that he worded it, but I'm paraphrasing there. And the problem is that George is just somebody who you can tell, despite being 68 years old, despite being around football for his entire life, he just has not been media trained. And I don't think he has any interest to do it. And he doesn't have to. Let me be clear. George McCaskey can say whatever the hell George McCaskey wants, right? He has that right. As the owner of a football team and as a human, he has the right to say whatever the hell he wants. But I think sometimes you got to understand the environment and read the room. And I don't think that George McCaskey or a lot of the people with the Bears front office and franchise honestly read the room very well. I think we are a franchise that we don't have people that really are savvy and read the room. Ryan Poles had that a little bit, but I think now that the luster's worn off the armor of Ryan Poles and he's kind of exposed that, Bears fans don't, they aren't buying as into some of the Ryan Poles isms as he's had prior. But I think when it all comes down to it, like the Bears we are not a team that's very media savvy. Now, he also took responsibility for where the Bears are. I get that. I love that as an owner that you got out in front of that and you said that. Cool. If you're going to get out and say anything, also take some onus into the situation that the Bears are on top of the frustration by the fans. Get it. Love it. It's all good, right? I just think when it's all said and done, this whole entire situation and where the Bears find themselves in is that they better hope that their next head coach is a lot more media savvy, not only than Matt Eberflus was, but a lot more than what a lot of people in this franchise are, because it's like getting left out to dry every time. Every time somebody with the Chicago Bears gets out in front of the media, it's always something. Now, some of that is the media, right? I want to be clear in that. A lot of that is the media. A lot of that is the narrative. A lot of that's just wanting to tear down the Chicago Bears because of how inept we've been as a franchise. I want to be clear there. Hell, I do that a little, right? But I think overall that it's clear that if the next head coach, you want a leader of men, but you also want somebody who's going to command respect and have poise when it comes to dealing with the media. Because if they don't, it's going to be left to tear something up. And then if anybody else got to come out and clean, it's just the Bears are never a team where everything seems in alignment. I'm not even talking about the alignment that George McCaskey didn't really understand. I just mean as far as a clear vision and a way of what we want to communicate to the media. And thus, when you also are an inept franchise that is losing and is hung out quarterbacks to dry, it's just going to leave you in a situation where you're going to get torn apart. And that's where the Bears are right now. And that's what I'm doing to a degree, right? We tear it apart because they leave so much space and ample opportunity to pick apart what they say. Because, again, as much as Kevin Warren is a talker and a salesman and all of this, even some of what Kevin Warren says, you just got to look at, like I said, the comments from Kevin Warren when it came to Ryan Poles. When asked about Ryan Poles' job, he said this. There's a lot of questions in your assumptions. When we say long time, a year is a lifetime. I know that's important. I know 2025 is important, not only from a football standpoint, from a stadium standpoint, from an operation standpoint. Again, I trust Ryan. I trust the process that he has put together. I'm confident it will yield positive results. We will hire a world-class coach, whether it's Thomas Brown or someone who currently does not work in our organization. We will get this right. I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited about being able to start these interviews. I haven't been able to sleep these couple of nights. Now, there's some hyperbole in that as well, because I guarantee you Kevin Warren's sleeping fine. But then again, to say when people are already questioning, are you overstepping your bounds? Are you stepping on the toes of Ryan Poles to say, I'm excited to get these interviews started? Right? It's just a little bit of things. Again, and as somebody who talks, and I refuse to call myself media, I'm just a Bears fan with a microphone that I love to talk about my team. I got a little sense, a little bit. I'm crazy, but a little sense, right? is that, you just leave so much space and opportunity for things that have doubt that's already been cast on your franchise. You leave so much opportunity for it to be torn apart more with how you've gone about that. And that's just, like I said, I just hope that whether it's Ben Johnson, whether it's Vrabel, whether it's Brian Flores, whether it's Pete Carroll, I just hope that whoever is that head coach is a little bit more savvy with the media. But I still want them to be honest. I don't want them to be out there selling wolf tickets. I want them to be out there. I just want them in the way that they're poised and the way that they communicate to just be clear, concise, and to be on top of things. That's what I would love to see happen, and the Bears to get somebody like that on top of it. We need all the locker room stuff, but you also need a little bit of that, because I tell you what, these fools in the front office, as long as we're losing, listen, I believe that if the Bears were a winning franchise, if we win 10 games, if we win 11 games, all this media savvy shit is not going to matter. I think that Ryan Poles would hold himself great there. I think Kevin Warren would barely talk. We'd barely see him. I think even when he did talk, I think more things would be in alignment. But while you're dealing with this shit and cleaning up this shit, it's not looking good, my boys. It's not looking good. And some of that is the way that they handle this. So I really hope that while we're cleaning this up and improving this, that whatever head coach that we get is also better prepared for the media. But you guys can let me know how you feel on everything down below. Make sure you guys are following the show at Bull Central Pod. I'm sorry, wrong podcast. You can follow the show at Shy Bear Central. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. ShyBearCentral@gmail.com, ChicagoBearCentral@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-242-9336. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bears related, but that's thanks to you lovely and beautiful people, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Like I liked in everything, Chi-Town up, Bear down. Love you guys. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.